You are listening to the Booktrospective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So, with that, let's get into the episode. Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. And I'm going to scoot up because I'm like 5 miles from the microphone.
Same here. I'm like,
leaning in. Okay. So, it's a new week. I have a new setup, guys. So, I feel like I'm cool. I'm not. I don't know if this is going to work, but
we'll see.
I'm going to try, but, good things. So, this week we are reading Lost Kingdom by Laurel Black. And I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
She reached out to us, the author did, and asked if we would read this. And actually, let me look and see when she said it releases.
I believe it was
yesterday? It was this week.
It was this week, yeah. I think maybe yesterday.
I don't know why 17. Yep, it was yesterday. So this just released yesterday. So sorry if you haven't read it in a day. It actually is a quick read. I mean, it's long. It's 472 pages, so it's not short, but I feel like it was a quick read.
Yeah.
So, and I even read. I had it on my Kindle, so that was my one book of the year. No. So, before we get into that, Keely, how was your week?
My week has been great. It's been a great week. Busy.
Yeah.
Tired.
She had her grand reopening.
Yep.
You had so many people.
I had so many people. It was a really great turnout, and this week has been pretty well.
When I got here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I think the storefront and all the posts and everything. That's good. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I hope you run out of everything. What did I do this week? I don't know what I do. It's freezing here.
It's been awful.
It's been -5 every day, and then tonight / into tomorrow it's supposed to snow. And I don't know where you are if you're listening to us, but we had this blizzard in 1978, and every time it snows they act like it's the blizzard in 1978. And so there's no milk at the stores and people are acting real crazy. So I don't know, or anywhere from 1 to 5 inches is what I saw, but I'll find out in the morning.
Peyton the other day was like, mind you, Peyton's my 13-year-old sister. Often refer to her as my kid, as well as my other siblings. I'm an older sibling, if you can't tell. But she said, it's been so bad out here lately. This has been the worst winter. And I'm like, girl, this is nothing. It's just cold.
It was just cold.
It's nothing.
Which I hate it. I mean, but I will kind of take it over the snow because I don't like being wet.
Oh, no.
And it's supposed to rain, because it's supposed to warm up. And the next week it's supposed to just rain. And I'm like, I hate that too.
And just barely warm enough to rain too.
Yeah, it's get me to April.
Yeah,
March, maybe. I don't know. We don't know when winter ends around here, but
right.
That's been my week, and I was on campus with my students, which I've been having a good time with them. So that's been good. I did some wedding stuff. Boring, blah blah. Spent entirely too much money. One day I want to go a whole week without spending any money. I don't think it's possible, but. All right, so Keely with the blurb.
Yes. Trusting him is the only way to save the kingdom. Betraying her is the only way to keep them both alive. Stripped of her memories and her magic, Raven has been left for dead. As a prisoner in the enemy's mineral mines, her only clue to who she is and where she came from is the mysterious map tattooed on her hand. A map containing hidden secrets that some people would kill for. Jeddak is one of those people. A warrior from the Kovac tribe. He's hunting for the powerful Xavian stone to pay the corrupt king's ransom. If he doesn't return home with it by the new moon, his betrothed will be executed. When Jeddak discovers that the prisoner named Raven has an only map that leads to the artifact, he allies with her as they navigate treacherous lands and battle against ancient magical forces to unravel the map's secret. But can Raven trust the stranger who's helping her? If the map gets into the wrong hands, thousands of people will die. As their feelings for each other grow, their tenuous alliance begins to fray, until Jeddak is forced to make a decision: betray Raven or forsake his kingdom. Choose wrong and he'll lose everything.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so we are doing a fantasy this week, which I felt like Lost Kingdom, like screamed fantasy at me. I did not read the blurb. You guys know how to read the blurb anyway, but I was like, I just want to be surprised. I had no idea what this book was going to be about. So I was pleasantly surprised. So I remember now, if you had a word to describe this book, what would it be?
Lord, I didn't even think of this.
I remember this week.
If I had a word, I would say... Oh.
I know it's hard. I was thinking on the way over here, like, what would I do?
I would say dangerous.
Ooh, yes. I would say... I have a couple things in my mind, so I'm like trying to pick which one I like better. I guess this isn't one word, but I would say mind control.
Okay.
That's not one word, but hey, whatever. Give me some grace.
Put a hyphen in there. It's okay.
Yeah, we'll make it one word. That works. So just a general spoiler-free summary. This book follows the main character, which is Raven, but it is a dual POV, which we love. So Jeddak, I don't know. So he is the male lead, and Raven is our female lead. And Raven has been put in this slave camp, and this is a fantasy world, so there is magic. There are several different tribes, and Raven has no recollection of her memories prior to being in this slave camp. The camp is by the Rathalan tribe, and they actually don't have magic, and they're enslaving all these other tribes that have different types of magic. And Raven doesn't even know where she came from or what her magic could be. They are using this stone called a malorite, and it basically takes away the magic of the enslaved people. So Raven is like miserable. She has a friend there, and then all of a sudden there's a guard who starts helping her, which is really strange because the Rathalans are all like brutal, horrible people. And come to find out, it is Jeddak in disguise. He got a magic spell put on him, and so he has his own reasons to be there. He's not looking for Raven. He's looking for the Zabian stone, and he ends up rescuing Raven and basically realizes that she's probably the key to what he's looking for. Of course, after he rescues her, then there's a mad hunt because before he rescued her, the Rathalans, one of their commanders, also realized that she probably is the key. And so they're following them basically across country, and they run into all these different tribes that are known to be terrible or have like issues with Jeddak's tribe because he's a Kovac. And so basically Raven decides to go with him because she's trying to figure out where she came from. She knows that she's supposed to have magic. She knows that she has something to do with the stone that he's looking for. So she's trying to figure that out. Meanwhile, he is on this hunt because he has something taken from him back home. And the only way to get it back is to find this stone. He doesn't even know what the stone's for or does or why they want it, but he's just doing it. So basically this story follows them. Obviously, when we have two leads that we know there's going to be some romance in there. But it's not romance heavy at all. It's very nice. I wonder if this is considered YA.
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, this is the YA because it read like that. So obviously throughout the story, we do get introduction to people from Raven's past, and they are kind of trying to make her cautious of Jeddak. She doesn't really know who to trust. And he, as the blurb says, gets put in a position to either help this girl that he's built a relationship with over the last weeks or so, or save his home, which is why he went on this original mission in the first place. So, that's all I got. Anything else?
Yeah, so you mentioned it is very light romance, I would say.
Yeah.
It's a slow burn.
Yes.
Mutual pining, but very light
Very
romance.
light, yeah. Yeah,
So.
definitely could have, like, your kids read this. Yeah, and it's not, like, it is a slow burn, but it wasn't, the book's not slow at all. Like,
Right.
I don't know. Some people say if you read on your Kindle, it goes faster, but I don't know if it was that, but I just felt like, I looked up and I was already, like, 50% through.
Mm-hmm.
So I, like, was like, oh. And I will say that I'm assuming there's going to be a book 2 at least. I don't know. I haven't looked at her information to see. Like,
by the way it ended, I could only assume.
Yeah, I figured, like, I was like 75% through, and I was like, I don't think we're getting to like a full circle here. So I don't know how many. I need to look on her website and see how many. Maybe she has it mapped out or not. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't know yet. So that is about as spoiler free as I can get. So if you have not read this book, because it just came out, it'll be a couple of days. It'll be like 5 days by the time this posts. But if you haven't read it and you don't want to be spoiled, then pause here and come back. If not, let's get into the episode. So.
And for you Kindle Unlimited peoples out there, it is on Kindle Unlimited.
Oh, I didn't. Well, we had the ARC, so I didn't know that. But yeah, that's cool. Definitely, it's honestly like if you're a reader, you're gonna read this in a day or two.
Oh yeah,
yeah, like it's quick. So I highly recommend. So we open in the slave camp with Raven. She's seeing a new girl that's been brought in, and she's putting a collar. So they make all the slaves wear the collars that has the malachite stone in it. And the girl has a bear. And so we learn that the people who have a bear with them are from a tribe called Kovacs. And they have like a mind connection with the bears. Like they can speak to the bears, all of those things. And Raven tells us that she is with, she's with the Rathalans, and they're in Malengard, I believe it's called. I have it down there later. And so she wants to help this girl, but there's kind of a friend that she has there named Hen. And she's like, mind your business. The last time you got involved, there was like basically she was whipped really badly. So just mind your business, girl. And she tells us like Hen is 18 or 19. So she's a few years older. I don't know does it ever say exactly how old Raven is? I don't think it does. Maybe like 16 or 17. And she's been kind of looking out for her. So she was there before Raven got there. They're mining the malachite, which is a mineral that turns their like skin blue, and it binds their magic. And again, the collar also has the malachite in it. And so like for the girl that's getting brought in, once they put the collar on her, it severs her connection with the bear because that's magical. So she asks Hen, like, do you think I'm a Kovac? And she's like, no, because you don't have a bear and you don't have any tattoos except for one, which we'll get into later. We learn she's been a slave for 7 months, and she has no memory of her prior life except for a dream on a beach, and it's with her brother. So she can tell that this guy is her brother. So she's been a slave for 7 months. She has no memory of her prior life except for that dream. And Hen had stopped her from attacking a guard who was beating a boy that she thought was her brother. So Hen's real name is actually Henna. And basically when they met, Henna was telling her about all the different tribes. Most of the slaves are from a tribe called Jakeens, and they have like golden bronze skin with crescent eyes. There's also Ardens, which are like tall, lean, tattooed, long hair. They basically describe them like willow trees. And then there's Terrans, which are short, sculpted. They are like real earthy, rugged looking, round face, and stony eyes. We learn that the Jakeens' magic binds them to metal, so their skin is kind of impenetrable, so that's kind of their cool thing there. There's also Magi and Riders, I believe, and altogether there's 8 tribes, including the Kovacs, Bramblemen, and the Anundu Wolves. I don't know if I'm saying that. There's lots of magical fantasy words and names in here, and I'm probably going to stumble all over them. So, Raven does have one tattoo, and she has a tattoo of 4 black feathers on her inner arm, which makes her believe that she's an Arden. The Rathalans are not affected by the mineral that they're mining because they don't have any magic to lose. So that's why they're kind of using this to take control of all the other tribes. And she asks Hen what tribe that Hen is from, but she just says it doesn't matter anymore. And she's really distracted because she's still watching the guard with this girl and the bear. And a guard that they call Meat comes in and basically is threatening her because she's not mining. So he grabs Hen by the throat, and because she doesn't like answer her, and then he smirks at her, and the girls basically know, like, basically these guards have been taking the females and essaying them, and then they end up dead. So they're pretty much like, great, that's us now. So Raven goes to hit him as he tries to put a chain on Hen's collar and drag her away, but then all the guards get called away because the bear is attacking them, and he just says, like, I'll deal with you later. So then we switch to Jeddak's point of view. He is talking to his bear, so we know that he's a Kovac because they all have bears. And basically, he's been transformed to look like the Rathalan guards, and his bear's name is Ka, and he's been put inside of this little pendant necklace. So he can still talk to him, but there's no bear walking alongside of him. He basically is trying to find out a way to upset the mine master because he is at the bar and he's trying to get, like, his keys. So he basically, like, tells the guards, like, oh, these other guards called you a pansy. They called you a puff pansy. And then, like, they're like, okay, we don't care. But then he bribes the bartender and is like, here, send them these drinks with a pansy in them. And they're like, you know what?
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, they're, you know, so they're like, I'm not a puff pansy. So they all start fighting, and the mine master is like trying to break it up or whatever. So Jeddak takes that opportunity to steal his keys, and he goes to this tower, which he calls an obsidian tower. And he only has 3 days left until this spell that he got wears off. So he has to find what he's looking for. And he needed a key to get down into the archives. So basically the land that the Rathalans took over was not theirs originally. And so there's some, like, library and archives underneath their towers that haven't been touched. So he's trying to get down there. And he believes that if he gets down there, he'll find out about the Xavian stone. He thinks it's down in these archives. And Ka asked him, like, what if the stone isn't there? Because they spent the last 4 months looking for it and have looked all over the city, and they don't even know why the Kovac king wants it, which is who sent Jeddak on this mission. And he says he doesn't care what the king wants it for, he just can't let Lila die. So we'll learn who Lila is in a little bit. The Kovac king basically took Lila and will only give her back to him if he comes home with the stone. Oh, it's not in a little bit, it's right now. So we learned that Lila and him are engaged. And he goes down into the archive, and one of the keys he stole does work. We go back to Raven. Hen is not speaking to her for the rest of the afternoon. And normally at night they sleep, like, next to each other, which is for body heat also. But that night they split up just so, like, if the guards come, they're not as easy to find. But people around them are, like, crying, moaning. They're sick. They're dying. It's cold. It's nasty. It's horrible. So, of course, Meat comes in. He's wandering around looking for them, and he does find Hen. And so he takes her off deep into the cave or the mine. And so Raven goes behind them, and she basically has this nail in her shoe that Hen had gave her as, like, some kind of weapon. And so she grabs that. And so she basically attacks him. She does get him off of Hen, but then she drops her nail and she wants to get the nail back. And so when she goes to do that, he grabs a hold of her and won't let go. We go back to Jeddak, and he wishes that his powers, whatever they are, work to track the stone, because he's really good at tracking, but it does not. And they're down in the archives, and Ka basically says, like, he can tell someone's been here recently because their bears have even better senses than they do. And they notice there's a table with books on it, and they can tell that someone's been down there looking at it, and the book is open to pages talking about the Xavian tribe, which is supposed to be a legend. And it says that members of the tribe had tattoos of 3 feathers on their arms and weapons made of rare wood, and are referred to as the Lost Kingdom that they thought was swallowed up by the sea. Xavian are also shape changers. And so while they're looking at this, they notice that there's a page missing, and then they hear that someone's coming. So they think it's a guard. So Jeddak goes out, and basically, like, Ka tells him to spill his drink, which basically makes it look like he went down there to pee. So he's like, oh, like, I had to pee or whatever. I couldn't leave my post. And so it's the commander, and they call him Bloodbane. And he puts, like, 3 slashes on his cheek, which is to mark him and demote him to a mine guard from a tower guard. But Kovacs have really good healing powers, so he knows that he'll heal, like, in a day or so. But he does go to the mine, and he hears that there was a Kovac captured, which is the girl earlier with the bear, and he wants to save it, but Ka's like, stay focused, why are we here? And so he ends up running into to Raven and Meat, basically attacking her. We switch back to Raven, and she sees the new guard, and he literally starts beating up Meat. And, like, he literally goes unconscious, and he's still beating on him. And she makes him stop because she's like, if you kill him, it'll just be worse for everybody. So don't kill him. But she can tell that this guard is different, and he seems very powerful. She noticed that he's hurt, and he says, like, I'll be fine, and tells her to go. But, like, Meat's laid out unconscious, so she goes over and kicks him in the balls and leaves. And I'm like, good, I would have done that too. So the next day, like, they go back to work, and there's another new girl, and the girl says, Raven, and then she's like, I've been looking for you for so long, and she has no idea who this girl is. And the girl says that they have to get that collar off of her, and she's like, who are you? And she's like, how do you know me? And she's like, it's me, Raven, it's Sora. And she tells her basically, like, oh, we think we found your brother, we know where the stone is. And she pulls, like, a metal pin out of her ponytail to try to unlock the collar. She tells her that her brother was attacked before he could get the stone, and that he's been captured, and that they have to find him before it's too late. But Sora can't get the collar off in enough time, and so she wants to go and find a key. And she takes off a necklace and gives it to Raven and tells her to keep it. It's a map, and Raven's the only one who can read it. And she said that's how they'll save her brother and finish what they started. And Sora's basically like, what have they done to you? Because obviously Raven doesn't remember anything. And she's like, you're a Xavian, you're a fighter, and you're my friend and a shapeshifter. So while she's doing all this, of course, Meat was like sulking behind and listening. And he comes up with 5 guards. He puts a collar on Sora's neck. And he says, send word to Lord Threlkel. And he, like, grabs all the girls. And he's like, all 3 of them attacked me last night. So they get chained to a platform. And they call Jeddak over. And they basically want him to whip them. Because he's been, like, demoted from the Mind Guards. And they want him to, like, be an official Mind Guard or whatever. We switch back to Jeddak's POV. And he knows that he should have just killed Meat last night. And he promised to handle it when he was talking to Raven, and so now he's like thinking of Lila, and he's just trying to focus on saving her, and this is just causing all kind of problems. So he basically takes too long, and Meat takes the whip from him and says like he's going to enjoy this, and he hits Hen first. And the commander comes out and says like that's enough because Lord Threlkel wants Raven. So they take Raven, and as they're pulling her away, Jeddak sees her feather tattoo, and he also heads off to like go wherever Raven's being taken. We switch back to Raven, and she's forced into a lift, and she looks back and literally sees Meat slit Hen's throat. So she dies, and she's devastated. Like, that's been her only friend this entire time. And so she's forced into a throne room where Lord Threlkel is there and says, like, she's filthy, and he says he took an oath to get rid of all the magic wielders, and he asks her if she's truly Xavian, and so she doesn't say anything. So he threatens to get another prisoner, and she's like, yes. So he asks where it is, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she tells him that she lost her memory. Meat comes in there and says he overheard her saying that she can shapeshift into a bird. And so the Lord basically tells the commander to take off her collar and see. And I was like, you're an idiot. But not really, because nothing really happens. But so she said she can feel her magic, but she's covered in that maladrite dust. Also, like when they get whipped and stuff, they have open wounds. And so that dust can get inside them as well. And so she can't transform, and he's like, kill her. But the commander's like, no, like, give her to me. I'll get answers out of her. And Jeddak is like outside eavesdropping, and we switch back to his POV. So he's like, I know she won't live long. So he goes to borrow a horse, and Ka's like, are we coming back here? And he's like, I mean, yeah, we haven't found the stone. So he plans to go to what they call the Market of Inn, which is basically a meeting place for all of the tribes, except for the Rathlins, but all the magic tribes, and they, like, there's places to stay there.
Open air market, kind of.
Yeah. Like, they can sleep there, though. There's, like, bars and, like, taverns and trading and all kinds of stuff. So he goes there, and he, when he gets there, they don't want to let him in because he looks like a Rathlin. But they have the Anundu wolves, and they're truth tellers at the door, so they can tell that he's not lying. And he's like, I bought a spell, and I'm a Kovac. And so he goes in, and he's looking for a magi named Sal, and basically she's a very strong magic wielder, even though she's his least favorite. And she's the one who gave him the transformation spell. He shows her the page of the Xavian, and she says that, you know, she might know something depending on what he has to offer, but her only currency is secrets. She doesn't like money or anything like that. So he tells her a secret. Well, he says he has a secret, but he's lying because he had already told all he had, like, the first time around. But he tells her that there's a Xavian girl enslaved in Malengard. And the last time what he had asked was, how did he find the stone? So this time he asked, where is the stone, to be more specific. And she says it's hidden from sight, like she can't see it, and it's either concealed from magic or by spells, but there is a map that will lead him to what he seeks if he finds the girl with a tattoo of 4 feathers. And he asks, how does he read the map? And she says, that's not your concern. But the Magi warns him that he won't be the only one seeking the girl. We go back to Raven, and the commander locks her in a room in a high tower, and he has guards inside and outside the room. And of course, one of the guards in the room is Meat. And he's like, I'm still gonna kill you. Like, he's still out to get her. 2 girls come in, and they're instructed to clean her up, and she like refuses to get in the tub because the guards are watching, and the girls basically have given them kind of like a sleeping potion, and they pass out. And they said they're not there to save her, but they do just want to let her have a bath in peace. So like before she like gets all cleaned up, she does grab Meat's knife, and it still literally has hen's blood on it. And she wants to kill him, but the girls are like, it's not worth it. Like, you know what happens if you kill him, like we'll all die. And so she begs one of them to help her sneak out of the tower, but they're like, yeah, I can't help you, basically. And the commander left this like sheer red nightgown for her to sleep in, or she can sleep naked. So that's great. So one of the girls is like, they don't know why they keep the collar on her, because that's when they basically tell her, like, if you've had any cuts or anything, like, the mineral's already inside you, so you're not going to get your magic back, and it could be permanent. The girls are, like, rushed out, and so she starts looking around the room for a key, and then Meat wakes up and says, how did you know red was my favorite color? Disgusting.
Yup.
Disgusting. So we go switch back to Jeddak, and he said it's worse now that they know who has the map to the stone versus just trying to find the stone, because Raven obviously is going to hate him after what happened with Hen. And someone realizes that he's a Rathalan at the market and is basically chasing him. He ends up running into another Kovac there, and it's Avery, which is his ex-best friend. So basically, Avery doesn't talk to him anymore because she doesn't trust Lila and doesn't like that he literally, and we'll find out the story, but he literally met Lila and fell in love and wanted to marry her in the blink of an eye, and she doesn't trust her. Avery starts to leave, and he's like, can I just talk to you? And then we switch back to Raven. So Raven is being attacked by Meat, and he gets her to the ground and is choking her, and then all of a sudden his eyes go big and he dies. And the commander has come in, and he says, like, how dare you touch what's mine, mine guard. And he apologizes about Meat, and he asks her to sit down, and she's like, what do you want? And he says, one, I don't, he's like, I didn't want Lord Threlcol, that's so hard for me to say, to kill you, because he doesn't think she deserves to die. And he basically gives her a robe to make her more comfortable and cover up. And he gives her some hot broth and some tea and says this should be good to rebuild her strength since she hasn't been fed well. And she asks why is he helping the Lord then? And he says when he was 7, Lord Threlcol killed his parents, and he had made a vow to avenge their deaths. So he joined the guard, and that's the only way he's been able to get close enough to do it. And he says you should get some sleep. And he gives his weapons to the guards outside the room to make her comfortable, and he sleeps on the floor. We go back to Jeddak, and he's talking to Avery about why he was at the Magi, but he doesn't want to tell her everything because he knows it's dangerous. And she basically asks, what would his betrothed think? And that's Lila, and this is where we learn that she doesn't like Lila. He tells us, he met Avery when he was training as a kid, and then he met Lila in the library one day that he was upset his mother died, and this was, very recent after that. And basically, he was in the library and pushed a bookcase over her, and she was underneath the bookcase. And they basically bonded over that they both had lost their moms. And then he proposed to her before he had even returned training after his mother's death. His father was actually really happy about the engagement, but Avery was not, and that's why they're not friends anymore. And she thinks Lila is using him. And he tells her that that Lila is actually a hostage now. So that is why he's on this mission, because the only way for him to get Lila back is to find the stone. And so Avery says, she's in the market with her dad because he's against the war that the king of the Kovacs is trying to start. And he's basically trying to, finalize allies and stuff like that. And so she asks, when are you planning on coming home? And he says the winter new moon, which is actually his planned wedding date. And basically, if he doesn't get the stone and get home by then, they'll kill Lila. We go back to Raven. Her collar is gone when she wakes up. And basically, Commander Bloodbane, I'll just call him Bane because that's what my note says. He slept on the floor, but he makes the bed look like he slept in it. And he tells her just to call him Bane also because Bloodbane is a nickname that they gave him. One of the girls from yesterday comes back and brings her breakfast and whispers to her that there is a way out of Malengard through a tunnel, and it's under a perimeter wall. And like Raven's like, okay, well, come with me. And she's like, no, like I'm really watched. And apparently her brother is there also, and she doesn't want to leave him or have anything happen to him. The commander comes back and tells her like just rest for today, and he wants to just see if her memories start coming back. We go back to Jeddak, and he has only 1 day left by this point. And he's back in Malengard. He sees Bloodbane, and he sees him talking to a servant, and he overhears their conversation. And Bane is like, well, it's not working. I need you to make it stronger. And the girl says, like, if I make it stronger, she may die. But also, she's wearing a collar, so she's like, I can't really use magic because I have a collar on. And so the girl goes back into the kitchen, and her, like, madam slaps her for disobeying Bane and tells her to deliver the tray to his room. So he ends up just following her back to the room. We go back to Raven, and the two girls come in again with food, but she can tell like something's happened because they're acting really different, and like they rush out to leave. They also left a box, and she finds a like note on there that says that she's going to have dinner tonight with Bane, and inside is this like shimmering emerald dress. And so she studies the map on her hand. So when Sora got to the cave, she handed her a necklace, and that's when, I said she told her, like, it was a map. Well, when she held the necklace, it, like, transformed into a map on her hand. And so it's, like, a circular kind of, like, maze, and then there's a bird in the middle of it. But she can't, like, she has no idea what that means. Okay, so she tries to summon her magic, but, like, she still doesn't feel anything. We switch back to Jeddak, and his plan is basically he's going to do some kind of distraction tonight. He's going to drug one of the guards and take their place at Bane's room to try to get to Raven. And he's also going to trigger an explosion near Lord Threlkol so that like Bane will go there and he can get to Raven. But he doesn't want to sneak her out because like he knows that's too risky. He just wants to like get her collar off, use that as leverage, and then maybe like she can fly away because Xavians transform into birds. So he expects Raven to like be miserable and like, you know, a slave. And he gets up there and takes the spot of another guard. He's like, he sees dinner set up for 2 people. And he's like, who is he having dinner with? And he also got a key for her collar to trade for the map. And then the commander comes in and recognizes him as the guard that peed in the stairwell that he marked up. But his scars have healed because he's a Kovac. And so he like recognizes him, but he doesn't have the scars. We switch back to Raven. She had the girls help her get dressed and brush her hair up, so she's looking all nice for Bane. And he tells her she looks breathtaking. And she says she's like planning to pretend that she got her memories back. So he tells her he ordered tea instead of wine and that she's been doing so much better with the tea. So they start having dinner and she's drinking her tea and she starts to feel really fuzzy around the edges. And she starts to feel entranced by Bane and doesn't want to leave him. And then she hears a voice in her head like something is wrong. And so he asks her, is she enjoying her tea? And if she can tell that he made tonight special for her. And he goes, is it working? And he says, tell me why you ransacked my chambers last night. And she doesn't even hesitate and tells him, like, I was looking for a weapon or a way to escape. And that she would have tried to kill him. And he says, you're going to tell me what I want to know when you're like this, aren't you? And he shows her this old piece of paper, which is torn from a book. So it's the paper that was missing. And it shows a stone of power, he says. And it's guarded by her tribe. What do you know of it? And she says, I've never heard of it. And she says, she starts to mention the map and then stops, but she just can't like control herself. So she shows him her hand and he asks to read it. And she says she doesn't know how to read it. And she says, there's a girl in the mine that gave me the map. And then she starts thinking like, he's so handsome and she'll do anything she can for him. And he goes, you want me, don't you? Blech. And he's like whispering in her ear and then he kisses her. Blech.
Gag me with a spoon.
So we go back to Jeddak. The explosion hasn't gone off yet, so he's like stressed out. But then it finally does, and everyone scrambles, so the plan works. And the commander says, don't let anyone in that room except for me. And so Jeddak pretends to like drink his drink that he laced and gives it to the other guard, so he passes out. And he goes in, and he doesn't even recognize Raven. And he tells her, like, the commander is getting ready to kill you. You can't stay here. And she's like, he's not going to kill me. He loves me, and I love him. I'm not leaving. And Ka's like, it's the tea. And they realize that she's been given a love potion. And she puts her hand up to keep him away. and they realize there's a map on her hand, and the guards are starting to come back. So she cries out, and she's like, I don't want to leave him. And he basically makes her drink from the flask and pass out, and then he cuts her dress off because it's too noticeable and wraps her in a cloak, and they go. Back to Raven, she's having another dream about her brother, and he says his name is Rainier, and he says, our people will all die because of this. You have to find me, Raven. Hurry. She hears voices and a man, and he's talking to the girl that gave her the tea or whatever, and he's basically like, you did this, and she's like, I didn't mean to, he forced me, it was supposed to be a truth potion, not a love potion, and she's like, there's no antidote. So the girl who made the potion also is the one who placed the bomb for him, and he basically gives her the key for her collar. Raven feels Raven starts to wake up, but then she passes out again. And then next time she wakes up, she smells like animals and straw. So she's like out in the like house thingy with the horses. The stables. Yeah. I'm like, what is that? The house thingy. So she goes to scream when she sees it's Jeddak basically. But she's like, I've never seen him. And he's dressed like, and obviously he looks like a Rathalan too. So, but she like, he's clearly a Kovac. And so she knows he's the guard that helped her with meat, but like now he has dark brown hair, tattoos, he's very attractive, and there's a big black bear with silver markings. So like his spell has worn off. And he says, we're still in the city and they can't get out because the guards are like at all the entrances. And she's like, where are my clothes? And he said, I had to take them off because like you had an emerald gown on. You can't just walk around. And she's like, you have a bear. Like, fair point. And he goes, are you still in love with Bane? And she's like, he was trying to help me. And he's like, no, he poisoned you. And she knows that he knows about the map and Sora. And she wants to go back in the mine and get her. And she realizes she can't, though. Like, there's guards all outside. And he tells her they can't get out of the gates. But then she remembers the tunnel. And he doesn't trust it because the girl who told her about the tunnel was the one that poisoned her. And also, like, why hasn't she tried to get out of the tunnel? So they argue about it, and then he turns his back, and she runs out the freaking stable. So back to his point of view, she's, like, Raven is running out there in the open, just like, la-da-da! And there's a guard nearby, so he, like, pins her up against a tree, and she's like, I don't need your help, and he tells her that she'll die. And then all of a sudden, two guards are, like, chasing after them, so him and Ka handle it, but of course, when they turn around, she's freaking gone again. And so she's looking for the tunnel, and she finds the tree that marks it, and she starts to grab this bush, and he's like, are you freaking crazy? That's black bramble. And she's like, what's black bramble? And it's basically a deadly plant that'll cause you to have like a Sleeping Beauty sleep, but it's like an endless sleep, and then eventually you just die. And you can't cut it or burn it because it'll just grow back. Like, it's like gray hair. Thicker and denser and deadlier. So there's like horns going off that signals that they've like escaped and there's nowhere else to go. So they are able to get the bush like out of the way, and they go through this tunnel, and it's basically like mud and yuckiness, and it's like super long. But finally they make it out on the other side, and they realize they are far away from Malengard. So basically Jeddak's like, let's go to this market because the Rathalans can't get in there. And she's like, why are you even helping me? There's no guards coming. And he doesn't really answer her. So they end up walking for like hours and hours and hours. And they finally reach the market, and they won't let her in because she doesn't have any magic. And they tell him that he's a spy also, which that's true. He is a spy. And she like, basically, if you don't have any magic, it's a mark of being like an outlaw or a thief. So that's why they won't let her in. And he won't leave her. And so he basically like pulls her to the side and asks, like, he didn't know that she didn't have magic. And he's like, where's your magic? And she basically says like the Malorite got in her blood and severed the connection. Back to Raven's point of view, she can't figure out like why Jeddak won't just leave her, and she can tell he's hiding something. So they sense someone's coming, and they go around the side of the like market and find a collapsed tree. So they like, he basically tells her to go in, and then he goes back around to the front because obviously like Ka's like, I'm not going on that branch, like it's gonna break. And so like he can't just go through the front by himself, and they're gonna be like, where's your person? So he goes to the front with him, and so she goes in there, and she's like, this is probably a freaking trap. Like, or she's like, the Rathalans are going to be behind me, and like they're going to come in too. So he tells her to go in there and stay right there. Does she listen?
Absolutely not.
No, she doesn't listen to a single thing the man says. So she starts like walking, I said, like an idiot. And he grabs her and is like, he told the guards about the trees, like, so they're going to take care of it so the Rathalans can't get in. And she's freezing, and he's like, yeah, that's why it took me a little while, because I went to go get you some clothes. And she's surprised, like, it's like the middle of the night, but it's like daytime in there. Like, everybody's up and they're not sleeping. And she asks if the people there know about Malengard, and he says some of them do, but he actually sent word the last time he was here. And she asks again, like, why are you here? And he says he's a spy, and he helped her because he felt like he owed her after the mines. She asks if they'll go back to his city, and he says yes, but he's going to find them somewhere to sleep tonight. They're in, like, a tavern, and there's a hooded figure watching them, and Jeddak says, like, just stay here, but she feels like she's being watched, so she goes after him. Which, this one I agree with, because, like, don't leave me here.
Right.
Like, I'm not staying here. So he basically went to the Magi tent, so she hears him in there, and the Magi tells him, like, I can't tell you anything else. And so when Jeddak leaves, she goes in there and says, I'm looking for my brother. And she, like, okay, so obviously it's Sal. She's like, what's your secret? And she's like, I'm a Xavian. And she says her brother is in a far place that magic can't reach, and the map will lead her to him, but only she can read it in her bird form, which sucks because, like, she can't get in her bird form.
Right.
So as she's in the tent, then the hooded guy from the tavern comes in, and she was asking the Magi if she could read her map, but then when the hooded figure comes in, and he's like, don't sell your soul to this witch, so she just takes off running. And we go back to Jeddak. Of course, like, he went to Sal to ask about Raven, and now he can't find her. And Ka is like, we should just tell her the truth, and he's like, no, not yet. He thinks maybe his grandmother, which he calls Grandmere Bear, or Grandmere Bear, may be able to heal Raven's magic, because he basically comes from a line of healers on his mom's side. And, like, basically by the time they get back to his home, which is called Aslan, it'll be the new moon. So, like, they just need more time. And then they see a runner. She's a runner. She's a track star. It's Raven. And she tells him that she followed him. And he says he asked if her power can be restored. Oh, no. He says that he was asking if her power can be restored. And he asked her if she talked to Sal. And she's like, no, which is a lie. And he's like, okay, let's go to the inn. So, we go back to Raven. Of course, we're at the inn. And guess what? There's one bed. But that doesn't mean anything here, people. He's like, I'll sleep on the floor. And she looks at her arm because she got a wound and asks for bandages, but he uses his magic and just heals her. And she's like, how did you do that? And that's when he basically tells him, like, I came from a line of healers, blah, blah, blah. So she wonders if his grandmother can heal her magic too, and asks if she can come home with him, which shocks him because he was trying to figure out how he was going to get her to agree to come home with him. So, like, that kills that. That's great. So he's like, it'll take a couple of weeks to get there, and he's like, Bane may have sent the whole army after them at this point. And he basically says, if it was something of mine that were taken, I wouldn't stop until I got you back. And he asks, like, why does Bane want her? And she hides her hand a little bit, even though he's already seen it. And she can't remember, but she does know that she has a brother, and she wants to be free. And basically to us, she's like, as soon as she gets free and can fly, she's going to, like, fly away and get away from everybody. Jeddak wonders if she's lying, and we're back in his point of view. He looks at her palm while she's asleep and talks to Ka a little bit, but they end up falling asleep, and then Ka wakes him up and says they can hear a man talking outside, and he's looking for a girl, and it's probably the hooded figure. So they sneak out, and they're basically trying to find a ride towards their direction, and everyone's like, no, but then there's a woman that says she's headed that way, but Jeddak realizes she's a Terran and is like, nope, never mind, can't trust him. And basically the Terrans and the Kovacs, like, have this long feud because the Terrans, like, took them to war or something and stole one of their cities, and so blah, 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 blah. So Raven's like, well, I'll just go with her without you. And he's like, okay, fine. And then the woman, like, overcharges him. So they go, like, for a little bit, and they end up getting attacked by people they call tribalists, which are just people who've left their tribe and have banded together. And so he, like, tells her to go ahead with Raven, and he, like, jumps out with Ka, and they're, like, kicking butt or whatever. And then Ka almost gets attacked, but Raven, like, ends up getting out and smacks the man with a stick. So they do end up all making it out. And then the lady also had, like, her nephew with her, so she's very thankful that they all saved them. And basically this is where we learn that because of his connection to Ka, or, like, any Kovac with their bear, if one of them dies, the other one dies. So not like Fourth Wing. It's kind of like the Wyvern, or not the Wyvern, the Griffins. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the Griffins. So Raven asks like who those people were, and he explains the tribeless thing, and he says the good news is they won't enter the Terran lands, and that's basically where they are now. But the bad news is that the Terrans hate the Kovacs again and won't help them there. And then their driver, her name was Marin, she gives them what's called a moonspar for basically helping, and it's a way to get light at night. But Jeddak tells her that it's also illegal because the Magi's hate it because it interferes with their magic powers. And so that night they basically set up camp, and he shows her how to make a fire because she basically said, like, if you take me with you, I'll do all the fires. We switch to Raven, and she's exhausted because they've been walking, and she trips and falls and asks for time to rest, but Jeddak is like, I'm going to carry you, and she's like, fine, I'll walk. And I was like, yep, the romance is budding. So the next territory they reach are like headed towards the Anundu Mountains, which is near the city of Jatan or Jedin or something. And that's basically the city that the Terrans stole from the Kovacs. So they set up camp again, and he's like teaching her how to play this game called Rune Dice. And she asks about his dad, and he says that his dad is always challenging him and basically makes him do all these extreme activities to test his abilities, like locked him out of the house. Did I make that up? That happened. He locked him out of the house for like days, and so he could find a way to get back in or something like that. Just like all kinds of crazy stuff. And he tells her like it must be nice to not remember sometimes because it's freeing. And she's basically like trying to explain how she feels, and he's like, oh, like it sounds like you're homesick. And she said, yes, like that is exactly what it is. And she asks if he thinks his grandmother can help her, and he thinks so. And then they hear a magpie cry, which is a bird, and it's really weird because it's like it's nighttime and they don't do that, so they know that something's coming, and it's the Rathalans, and there's literally like a small army of them. So he tells her to go hide, and she does, and him and Ka are like fighting, but she's like, okay, like I should help. And something like in her like makes her feel like she can fight even though she has no memory of it. So one of the like Rathalans get killed, and his sword falls out, so she grabs it, and she actually can fight. Like her muscle memory kicks in, and she's really like, she saves Jeddak. And then there's like ton of Rathalans though, so like they're basically like, okay, we're gonna die. And some like mysterious bowman comes out of nowhere and like kills all the Rathalans, and then just goes away. And so they try to keep one of the Rathalans alive and basically ask him questions, but he doesn't really injure anything. But Jeddak does have a shoulder injury from this incident, and he ends up passing out. And so she's freaking out. So she starts a fire and basically like cleans his wounds and actually even like prays that he'll be okay. And then she like can't notice like how muscly he is when she's like taking his shirt off. So we switch to Jeddak's POV, and he wakes up and he knows like he's running out of time to get to Lila. He can't communicate with Ka because whatever like they used to stab his shoulder had the malorite in it, and so he basically has Raven use these weeds or plants or whatever that Ka brought, and like it makes like a poultice or something. I don't know terms, and it makes like a paste and put it on there. And she asks about the necklace he's wearing, and he doesn't want to tell her it came from Lila. But so she asks about the tattoos, and he tells her he was born with those tattoos, and they're very similar to his father's. And also when he was born, a magi came and gave his parents a gift, and they basically put a protection spell on him as the firstborn child. And so one of his tattoos signifies that protection spell. And she says, like, that's the third time I've saved your life. And he tells her a phrase in his language that basically means, you're part of me, which is what Kovacs believes happens when you save another person's life. And he feels bad because he feels like he's distracted by Raven and should be focusing on Lila. We go back to Raven, and she also feels very distracted by Jeddak. And she's practicing throwing his daggers, and she's able to, like, hit right in the middle of, like, whatever she's targeting. And when he wakes up again, he's like, we got to start moving. He is a Kovac, so he'll heal pretty fast, but like he's still kind of like limping around. And he remembers that the attackers had said that night that the Rathalans are also at the mountain pass, which is like the only way that they can get to his homeland. And so they need to find another way. But he starts to accuse Raven of like telling someone where they're going. And Ka speaks out loud, which I didn't know that he do. And he's like, there's another way, the Bramblelands, which are full, like that bramble bush. So I'm assuming that the Bramblelands are full of deadly bushes. So we go back to Jeddak, and he's like, he doesn't like this plan. He's like, no one makes it out of there alive. And he basically wants to find a reason to be mad at Raven because he's attracted to her. And so he knows he's only mad at himself for using her and lying and not being able to protect her. And he is like worried about going to the Bramblemen. Like he's like, they're dangerous, and apparently they're supposed to be cannibals. So they go to a village like nearby the Bramble Lands for a map, which there is like some really old map, but they're basically like, you're all stupid, so go ahead, die. And he doesn't tell Raven all the risks, but basically she's like, let me guess, we're gonna die in here, and they like eat people. Like she basically guessed everything that they knew would happen. So they like set up a camp before they actually go into the Bramblelands to try to get like their last little bit of rest. And all he can think about is like her hands on his chest. And he's like, dang, I wish my wound was still kind of bad. So she would like check out my chest again. And all he wants to do is like grab her and kiss her. But he's like, okay, Lila. So they end up like starting to go into the Bramblelands. And he's like, I feel really guilty about bringing you. And he almost tells her everything, but Ka is like, there's not time. The Rathalans are coming. And he's still like trying not to go in, but then they get attacked. And so like he's getting attacked by the Rathalans, and Raven saves him again by stabbing the guy in the back. So they have no choice but to go in to the Bramblelands, and it starts like raining, and they had a map, but they're like lost immediately. So she pulls out the moonspar because it has to be like completely black for it to work, and it does. And so they find a place to sleep, but as they find the spot, she looks at her hand and she has just like the tiniest scratch and like a little drop of blood. And so she got scratched by one of the brambles, and she like immediately passes out. And he heals her hand, but she still doesn't wake up. And he's like, I can't breathe. And he's like, I can't exist if something happens to her. And he's like, I love Lila, but I've never felt like this way. And he really just wants to kiss Raven. We go to Raven, and she wakes up, and I don't know if he's like holding her still. Like Jeddak's basically like holding and like leaning over her, but also asleep maybe. I don't know. And he's like breathing in her ear until then she like passes back out. But then she wakes up again, and she sees the man in the hood like walking up on them. She recognizes him, but then like also kind of forgets. And he says he's been looking for her. Hello, Feyre darling. But the man has like white hair, blue eyes, and she thinks she's dreaming, but then he touches her head and says like she's burning up and lucky to be alive. And he feeds her something that tastes really sour. And he touches her tattoo and says like, how did you get a fourth feather? And then Jeddak starts to wake up, so the guy leaves, and he has a bow on his back. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is our mysterious bowman. And so she dreams again of her brother, and her brother tells her they'll make her pay for what she did. And she basically remembers pieces of like the guy coming up to them like a dream. So the next day, Ka goes ahead to like see what's up there, and Jeddak asks if she can walk, and she hears a bird flying and wonders why there would be a bird like in a place like this. And Jeddak starts to call out for Ka, but he's not answering, and they realize they're not alone. There's bramblemen everywhere. So he's like, just let us pass, because people basically go in there because they're supposed to have a city of gold and treasure. So people go in there trying to rob them, but he's like, I'm not here for that. Like, we're just trying to get somewhere. Like, just let us pass. And they won't. They said they're trespassing, and they say no one leaves this place. And they're like, we haven't, and they're like, what did you do with Ka? And they're like, nothing yet. So they have Ka surrounded with spears, and the spears have like the bramble on the end of them. And so they basically lead them on like a 3-mile walk. I don't know. I feel like they always walk for hours everywhere they go. Right. And so like they're walking, and like the bramblemen are like bumping up against the brambles and everything, and they're perfectly fine. And they put them in this cell, and like it doesn't even have bars on it. It just has like sheets of the bramble in front of it that they can't get out of. And Raven is still very feverish, and she ends up passing out again. We switch to Jeddak really quick, and the guards basically come and grab Raven, and he tries to fight them off, but there's like 2 of them he fights off, but then the third one gets him pinned, and they take her away. And he's basically like, this is all my fault, and he thinks about how he doesn't have this strong feeling for Lila the way he does for Raven. Back with Raven, she wakes up alone in a bed, and a woman comes in asking why she's here and why is she here with a Kovac. And the woman knows that she's Xavian, and she says, go ahead. Raven tells the woman, go ahead and eat me then. And the lady's like, I don't know who started this cannibal rumor. Like, it's just like hilarious to them. And so the lady has their map that they had, and she says that she does trust that they were just passing through. And we learn that this lady is the queen. And she says that Jeddak is making the guards nervous because he's like attacking them. Which, like, okay, then explain yourselves, because maybe I'll stop beating on you then. And so they basically had brought Raven here to help her with the poison, and that the nectar of the bramble flower is actually what is going to heal Raven and what makes the bramblemen immune to the bramble. So that's why they could bump up against them. And she says it's also just a rumor that there's a city of gold. Like, that's not what basically there's like an old language. And so everyone's been translating it to city of gold. But what it actually means is city of nectar, which is for the bramble nectar, which is like their gold to them. And so basically, like, even though there is no gold, people think that there is. So they come in and they like steal and they try to kill them. So they are very protective. And so the queen asks, like, why are the Rathalans chasing you? And she tells her that the Xavians might be the only one that survived this upcoming war, and she knew she was a Xavian because of her tattoo. So at this point in time, Raven didn't even know what her tattoo meant. No, because Jeddak has not said anything to her about Xavians either. And so the queen asked Raven to come to their feast tonight, and she's like, okay, well, she needs Jeddak to come, or she needs to see Jeddak. So they're like, okay, we'll invite him too. So the feast is in the Hall of Candles, and she basically, like, there's all this food, and she's so hungry, but she's like, I'm going to wait for Jeddak. And also, the hooded man comes in, and she doesn't remember him, and the queen calls him Skylar, and he tells her that the Rathalans are tracking someone, and she realizes that he's the bowman. So the queen implies that Skylar and Raven actually know each other, and then tells her that, and then Skylar tells her, like, we need to talk when they aren't in that room anymore. And so Raven asks, like, who are you? And he shows her that he has a 3-feather tattoo. So he's a Xavian. We switch to Jeddak, and the guards come for him for the feast. And he's like, oh, am I going to be the main course? And so they take him, but they leave Ka. And he basically is, like, clocking all his surroundings to try to make a map of how to escape. And he goes into the, like, hall. He sees Raven, and he immediately wants to kiss her. And we learn that the feast that they're having is to celebrate the one night a year that the flower blooms so that they can get the nectar. And the queen tells Jeddak that Raven explained everything and that they are now, like, their guests. They're not prisoners. And she introduces Skylar to him as well. And she explains everything about the nectar and the flower. And Skylar is seated next to Raven. And so they're, like, talking and whispering. And Jeddak is pissed. We go to Raven, and Raven can tell that Jeddak's upset across the table. And the queen offers Jeddak the nectar also, and he's like, there must be a price for this. And she says, basically, just to keep our secret. Like, let everyone think all the things that they have been thinking. And so they both are like, can we leave? And she's basically like, yeah. And so Skylar says he's going to bed and tells Raven that he'll find her later. And then a man comes in and is like, Ka took a hostage. And so the queen asks to talk to Raven as, like, Jeddak goes and, like, handles Ka, basically, and lets them know that they'll both have, like, a bed that night. And the queen says that Xavians only have 3 feathers, and that tattoo is normally on both of their arms, but Raven only has 1 tattoo, and it has 4 feathers. And so she thinks, the queen does, that the extra feather is actually a magi spell, and that normally magi magic will fade, but they use tattoos to bind them longer. And so she thinks that the magi, whoever bound her or put the spell on her, wants Raven to be forgetting. And only the magi who did the spell can undo it. So she goes to her room for the night, and Jeddak comes and says he wants to leave tonight because he doesn't trust them. He says he never meant to put her in any danger, and he, like, grabs her hair and tucks it behind her ear, and then he kisses her, and then he backs up and he's like, I can't, and he just leaves. So we go to Jeddak, and he is back with Ka, and he tells Ka everything about the Brambleman. Then he tells him about the kiss, and Ka's like, okay, like, what about Lila? And Jeddak says he doesn't know. And then he realizes that he saw the bowman way back before he saved them. And he thinks that Raven will probably be safe for the night, so he's not as worried. We go back to Raven, and she's just thinking about the kiss. And Skylar pops up. She tried to leave and, like, go in her room, but he says, like, you can't go to Asklin with Jeddak. And he says that Jeddak's been lying to her. And she says, just leave me alone. And he basically tells her, like, I lost you once, I won't lose you again. So she's like, who are you? And he says, I'm a Xavian, like her and her brother. And we learn that she doesn't just have a brother, she's a twin. And they are the heirs to the Xavian throne and sworn protectors of the Azure Stone, which they call the Xavian Stone, and that Skylar is their friend. He says that they're from a place called Storm Trail, and that's their kingdom, and that basically they were attacked earlier this year. And a magi named Rhea, also known as the White Widow, bewitched an army to, like, come in at night and try to get the stone. And the stone is made of pure magic. So basically, like, whoever wields the stone is, like, the most powerful. They could kill everybody or whatever they want to do. But also their kingdom is linked to the stone. And so without the stone, their kingdom is starting to die. So before the White Widow could actually take the stone, though, there was like a large black bird with wings of flame that came and took the stone. He also mentioned Sora and a guy named Bard, and basically like they all were kind of together searching for the stone. And they had all flown like different directions and were supposed to return to like one of the markets in 7 days, but Raven never came back. And that's when she got captured, obviously, and put in Malengard. And then basically her brother had finally found the creature, and it was in a place called the Waste, and that's where they think the stone is. But it's like a magic dead zone, so they can't like use magic to track or anything there. But the map is the only way to navigate the Waste. And basically Skylar had stayed behind because he heard he like ran into Jeddak at the market and heard that he was looking for the Xavian stone, and that the tribeless people had taken Raven's brother to the Waste. They couldn't go back in for him because the Magi had lied, and they couldn't use the map. So originally the map was supposed to be spelled so that any Xavian could read it, but the Magi spelled it and so that only Raven and her brother could read it. So Sora had basically went out on her own to find Raven at Malengard, and that's how she ended up there, and now she's captured. And he couldn't figure out for the longest why Raven was different, but he was so happy he found her at the market that night, but then she didn't recognize him, and then like he learns about her memories and everything. And so as they're talking, a hawk flies in, and it turns into a man, and who also seems to know her, and we realize this is Bard. And he thinks that they have a way to save Sora back at Malengard. So Skylar tells her, like, don't go with Jeddak. The king wants the stone, but she doesn't really like believe him. So we switch to Jeddak, and Raven is like waking him up, and she basically confronts him about everything. And he says that like he tells her everything, but he's like, you lied too about Bane. And he says like you can't trust Skylar either. So she tells him that he told her everything, and I'm like, okay, is this gonna be a love triangle? And she tells him that he'll never get the stone, and he says he's not leaving without her. And she says, like, just leave like you did after that kiss yesterday. And he tells her he shouldn't have, but he finally does tell her about Lila. And she says, like, so you're just going to trade me for her? And he says no. He doesn't even know, like, what the stone's for, what it does, why does the king want it. And he says, like, I'm an idiot. And she says, yeah, you are. He tells her it's her choice, but him and Ka are leaving tomorrow. And so they basically sent word to her, or he sent Ka to basically say like they were leaving at sunrise, and she hasn't shown up, so they end up leaving, and they basically have one of the Bramblemen as their guide. But as they're leaving, Raven calls for them to wait up, and she joins them, and she says she's coming so she can get her magic back. So Raven is really struggling with the whole engagement reveal, and she had to go though because she just couldn't stand leaving him. So as they're walking, their guide just like disappears, and it starts getting dark, and they feel like it's a trap. And then a bunch of men with spears come out, and they're like, oh, you're trespassing. But the guide basically reappears. He's just like eating fruit. Like, hey, took a lunch break. What? And he's like, no, they're fine. So the new guards are like, well, there's Rathalans blocking the path up ahead. And Jeddak's like, well, that's my homeland. Like, why would there be Rathalans there? Like, we wouldn't let Rathalans be there. And now he's worried that his, like, kingdom has fallen to the Rathalans also. So they learn that there's another way, and it's called the Forgotten Forest. And so they set up camp, like, after they get out of the bramble, but before they get to the forest. And we learned that basically this forest is like a bunch of land that's supposed to be cursed by a queen. And basically, before they left, their guide told them, like, if you go in the forest, you have to stay together. Don't go off of the path, and don't talk to anyone you see, and don't disturb the lake. So we switch to Jeddak, and he basically tries to talk to Raven, and at first she like blows him off, but then she asks him like, what does the king want the stone for? And he says he doesn't know. And he asks what she knows about the stone, and she mentions the White Widow. She asks him would he destroy her if he found the stone, and he says no. So they set up camp again, and Ka asks about Jeddak's feelings for Raven when she falls asleep, and he says like, I can't have feelings, I'm getting married. So he doesn't answer the question, and Ka's like, you're in denial, and he's like, just mind your business. And they basically had set up this camp in the forest, so they made it to the forest, but when they wake up that next day, Raven of course is missing. So Raven had woken up, we're in her POV, and she basically was like, the fire was out, so she was grabbing firewood, and I was like, girl, side-eye. But she actually didn't go like far, like she could still see them. And so she's getting this wood, and someone approaches her and says, Raven, is that you? And she's like, oh, it's my brother. No, it is not. What did they tell you?
Right.
So he says Skylar told him where she was, and they hug, and she's like, oh, here's my friends, and she turns around and like the fog has shifted, and so like Ka and Jeddak are gone. And he looks at the map on her hand, and she says, I've lost my magic. And he says, well, let me show you something, and pulls her towards the trees. And he says that they have the stone, and the elders can restore her power, but she's like, something's off. So she grabs his hand anyways, and they're like standing at the edge of this cliff, and he's basically like, oh, we're going to go home. I'm going to fly you home. And she hears Skylar go, what are you doing? As she literally is jumping off of this cliff. And so he like grabs her like in bird form and slams her back down. And she's like, my brother was helping me fly. And he's like, your brother is not here. So she says, like, he was right there. She's like, Rainier was taking me home. And he's like, who is Rainier? Your brother's name is Swift. So I don't know who Rainier is. Mm. And so he asked, like, why did she leave the Bramble? And she says that, you know, basically Jeddak was ready to go. And he's like, do you like him? And she says no, but he tells her, like, he can sense the truth. Like, they're birds, and like, they basically kind of share, like, a rhythm and things. So he can tell, like, her heartbeat gets faster and all this stuff. And he tells her, like, okay, well, then I'm going to go with you if you're going with him. And he says, like, they couldn't find Sora when him and Bard had went back looking for her. And all of a sudden, they're surrounded by Kovacs, and they say they're taking them to the king. So we switch to Jeddak, and he is looking for Raven. And he tells Ka they should split up. We know that's never a good idea. Mm-hmm. But they split up, and he sees a person, like, down on the ground, and he thinks it's Raven, but it's Lila. And she says the Rathalans came, and basically their homeland has fallen to them, and that the king and everyone is dead. And today is the day that was supposed to be their wedding. She says that she's going to her homelands. She's also a Kovac, but she's not from the same place. And he can come with her, and that her father will marry them. And he's like, I can't. He hears a scream from Raven, and he tells Lila to stay there. And he runs to the lake, and he sees, like, these boulders in the middle, and Raven's just, like, laid out across them. And he starts going into the freaking lake.
Of course.
And so as he, like, barely gets in there, he hears laughter from a woman, and Lila and Raven haven't moved, so he doesn't know where it's coming from. And he hears a woman say, he was tricky, or maybe I'm just losing my touch. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the queen who cursed the forest. He asks who she is, and she says, who are you to come in my lands, Kovac? And she says, Raven was easy to catch. And she emerges from the lake. The water starts bubbling, and it's like a huge half magi, half monster beast thing. She has like blue like watercolor skin, and like talon nails and tentacles, and it literally, I'm thinking like Ursula at the end of Little Mermaid. And so she says he heard, she tells him he was hard because Lila wasn't enough to break him. Like, Raven's the thing that, like, got him going. And now she takes one of her tentacles and, like, wraps it around him. And then she takes the other and grabs Lila and Raven and, like, dunks them in the water and stuff. And she tells him, like, I'll spare one of them, but, like, basically you have to choose. And so she starts choking him, but Ka comes up and, like, basically bites her tentacle. And Jeddak's like, get the girls. And Ka's like, there are no girls. And so he's like dragging Jeddak away, and he's like, no, like, I have to go back, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, there's no one there. And he tells him, like, the forest shows you your worst fear. And then so, like, Jeddak's like, well, it didn't show you. And he's like, I think seeing you getting strangled by a tentacle monster in the lake is my worst fear. And so he tells him that he did see Raven and Skylar, and that they got taken by Kovac. So they're like, okay, it's time to go home. So we go to Raven, and she's with Skylar, and she's like, just fly off. Like, you can get away. But he won't leave her. And she thinks, like, she's looking for Jeddak, but she's like, everyone here looks like Jeddak. And so they basically take them to the throne room in front of the king, and Bane is there. And he goes, hello, Raven, I've missed you. Like, no. Mm-hmm. And so Jeddak and Ka come in, and Jeddak goes, Father, what's the meaning of this? And I said, he's the freaking prince.
Yeah, I had
no clue.
An inkling.
I had no clue.
The way they kept bringing up the king and how he's, like, been shifty and weird. And I'm like, okay, why did they keep bringing it up to him?
Yeah.
So I had a little bit
I thought he was just, like, some, like, super strong warrior or whatever from them. So they, like, just picked him because I'm an idiot. So I had no idea. And I was like, whole time, that's your dad.
I do have to say, though, the reason why I was like, just, like, on the fence about it was, I was like, why would his father kidnap
Lila.
his fiance and threaten.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that.
I was like, hold on, you prince. So he's like, that's his dad, and then they bring Lila in, and so she's like, oh, Jeddak, you're back. Like, I knew you'd be back. And Raven's pissed. And so the king is mad that he didn't come back with the stone and tells him he's unworthy of the throne. And he says Bane has agreed to give them Malorite weapons and immunity in exchange for the map. And Jeddak's like, he'll kill everyone. And his dad's like, I don't care as long as he doesn't kill us. And so one of the guards grab Raven, and Lila basically holds Jeddak back. And Bane says that they should thank him because he actually plans to overthrow Lord Threlkall and end the Rathalan's like rampage, but he doesn't want to kill all the tribes because he's like, who would be our slaves? Yeah, priorities.
Right.
And she's like, I'll never tell you like where the stone is. And he brings in Sora, and he's like, I don't need you. And he starts slicing into her hand, and I'm like, are you cutting off her palm? Like, what's going on here? So Jeddak, we go to his point of view, and Bane basically like, he doesn't like slice her whole palm off, but like basically when he cuts her hand really good, it makes the map turn back into like an orb, and then it like rolls off. So then everyone starts scrambling for a second, and they start fighting, but they all kind of get repinned down, and Jeddak starts begging his father. So his dad's like, okay, fine, give us a minute. And his dad says that Lila's dad is basically agreeing to give them armies once those two get married. And so that they can attack the Terrans and take their city back. And he's like, I can't marry her. And he's like, you're going to marry her by sunset tonight or I'll kill Raven. Because he basically has like figured out that he has feelings for Raven. And he tells his dad, like, Raven's the only one who can read the map. But his dad doesn't care because he's not the one who wants the map. Bane is. He tells Bane, like, some new agreement. Because Bane's like, that's not the agreement. But he ends up agreeing. And he announces that the wedding will be at sunset. And Jeddak says, like, the weddings are typically 3 parts. So tonight they're going to do a blood oath, and then they would typically do an exchange of marks, and then what they call the kindling. We switch back to Raven, and she's in a cell with Sora and Skylar. And Sora says that basically Bane had come for her a few days after Raven had left. And then Raven remembers that she had told him, like, about Sora when she was poisoned. And basically Bane was going to kill her, so she lied and said that she could read the map. And then Skylar is wearing a necklace with a feather on it and tells Raven that she gave it to him. And so she starts to feel guilty. But he takes the feather and tries to pick the lock, but the guards notice, and Bane comes and grabs Raven to take her to the wedding. We switch back to Jeddak, and him and Lila are like placed in a room, and Lila is not at all upset about what's going on. Like, she's like, well, I mean, like, it works out for us in the end. And so Jeddak lies to her and is like, of course, like, I still want to marry you. And Lila's like, I love you, and he just doesn't respond. And so they get put like in their separate rooms, and then he gets dressed and comes out, and Avery is back, and she's basically like, what's going on? Like, your wedding's tonight? Like, what's all this stuff? So he tells her everything, and she's like, you cannot marry this girl. And Lila comes down, they go into like the throne room, and he's waiting, and she does have like a white wedding dress on. So they go to do the ceremony, and basically they put like 2 little cuts on their hands, and like the whole time he's like looking at Raven, trying to get her to look at him, but she won't. And so he cuts his hand, and like Lila cuts hers, and they grasp hands, and then suddenly his body like drains of like all energy, and he feels cold, and he feels like poisoned, and he starts to collapse, and Lila leans in and whispers like, you're mine now. I was like, girl. And then he looks down at the necklace he's been wearing that she gave him, and it's glowing red, and she says, I own you. You have no will of your own, no desires other than to please me. Wonderful. So we switch to Raven, and Bane, like, while this is going on, Bane looks at her and goes, that could have been us. You could have been beside me. Like, please, sir. You've got to be a joke. And Lila yells to him and is like, bring me the map. And so Jeddak gets up, and like, because he's a slave now, and goes over to Bane and rips the map from him, and Bane's like, attack them all, the Xavians and the Kovacs. And so Lila's able to actually, or not Lila, Raven's actually able to get the map because of the tussle, but then Jeddak gets on top of her, and because he's like possessed now, he doesn't care about her. So she throws it to Sora, and he goes after her, but then like Ka grabs him, and he's like trying to tell everyone to run. And Jeddak does end up getting the map from Sora, and then he's like getting ready to stab her, and so Skylar comes in, and he pins him down, but they all have like handcuff shackles on them or whatever. And all Raven keeps seeing is like this necklace. Like the necklace is glowing. She's like, the necklace, there's something with the necklace. And she looks at his chest and realizes that his protection mark isn't there anymore. And now there's a giant white spider on his chest. And she realizes that this is probably a magi spell. So she goes to help, and Jeddak basically is like going to hit her, but then Sora jumps in front and he literally like clocks her in the head and she goes down. Avery throws them a key to basically unlock their shackles so that they can have a better fighting chance. And Raven notices that Ka is fighting Lila's bear, and they're both like tearing each other up, like bleeding and everything. And then Lila's bear gets the upper hand on Ka, but then another bear comes in and like they basically tag team Lila's bear. So they get their shackles undone, and Sora's like passed out, bleeding, but she's still breathing. And Skylar says if Lila gets the map, it's going to be even worse than if the Rathlins have them. So then they look over and like Ka and the other bear end up killing Lila's bear, and so they're like, oh, okay, good, like Lila's going to die now. No,
Wrong.
She doesn't. It's literally like, what's his name? It's like Jack Barlow.
Oh my gosh.
This is very similar. There's very similar moments. And so she doesn't die. So all of a sudden there's like this like loud thunder, and then Lila's hair starts like growing crazy long and getting even like whiter because she's blonde. And she like sheds her skin like a freaking snake, and she's the freaking White Widow.
Surprise!
Shade. So then like the king, Bloodbane, and Jeddak are like all lined up, and they're like all on her side. And so like Raven and them are like, okay, like we're about to die. And so she tells Jeddak like she tells him to like kill Bane. So he like knocks him out. So we don't know if he's dead or not. And Raven's like, I kind of hope he is. And the White Widow basically says like Jeddak's protection spell made it really hard for her to like get to him. So basically she put on this Lila persona and like used love as a means to get to him.
Ugh.
Yes, disgusting. And she tells him to kill Raven. And he looks at her, and so Raven looks at him and is like, I love you. And like it worked for a second. Like he's like, I can't hold it. And he tells her the moon spar. And so she remembers that he had told her that the reason that the moon spars are illegal is because the Magi don't like them because they interfere with their magic. So she grabs it out, and Lila like shrieks because it like has this blinding light, and it has enough to like break the spell over Jeddak. And so Skylar takes that moment to attack her, and he like tackles her, and they both go like tumbling over the edge. You know, like that scene. Oh, you don't watch Harry Potter. It's like that scene in Harry Potter where like Harry grabs Voldemort, and like they both go like tumble fighting. I don't. It's like that. So we go back to Jeddak, and he's like back to his normal self, and he like is so like disgusted because he like saw everything that he did. Like he's like looking at his hands. I mean, he didn't have any control over it. So he like his necklace is gone, and then Ka rips the necklace from his dad's neck, and we realize like he was spelled also. And this gives me very much Throne of Glass, that series vibes. So yeah. And then so he goes over to Raven because she's at the balcony, and she's obviously upset because Skylar went over the balcony with the White Widow, and she's like, go away. And he's like, well, just let me heal you. And she's like, just leave me alone. And Skylar comes up like in bird form, and he lands, and he's like, she said, leave her alone. So Ka's basically like, give her some time, like it'll be fine. So Jeddak basically does not come out of his room for the next 2 days. And then like he ends up sending a message to Raven asking if she'll meet him on the 3rd day. So it's like sunrise. Ka's like, yeah, because normal people sleep at this time. But she does end up coming, and he's like, hi. And she's like, hi. And so he basically apologizes for everything. And she looks at him and is like, why do you still have a spider tattoo? Because the White Widow died, right? I don't know. And so, like, he starts to wonder, like, is she dead? And he says, like, he brought her here to apologize, but he also brought her here to meet someone. And so his grandma walks out, and she's like, I want to help you, like, with your magic. So we switch over to Raven, and, like, she's thinking of Hen. And Skylar comes up to her, and he, like, had left for a few days because, of course, Bane didn't die when they knocked him out. And he was not captured. So basically, after, like, the king was released from the spell, he, like, got his senses about him and had them, like capture up all the Rathlins and all that stuff. And so, of course, Bane wasn't with them, so he's missing. And he asked about, like, what happened with Grandmere, and she's like, how do you even know that? Like, you weren't here. But she's basically like, she did heal her, and she healed the damage from the Malorite, but she wasn't able to restore her magic. And they think it's because of the tattoo. They think the tattoo, like the extra feather tattoo, is not only messing with her memory, but it's also binding her magic. And he says, like, maybe it was the White Widow, and, like, because she's dead, it'll go away. And Raven says, like, do you think that she's dead? But he's like, yeah, I mean, I went over the mountain with her. She wouldn't have survived. She didn't have wings. And she tells him that Grandmere said that there might be another way for her magic, and there's a place where spells are broken called the Icelands. And basically the Icelands are, like, wolf territory. And so she finally asks Skylar, like, were we a couple? And he says no, but, like, the way he says it, she's like, yeah, I think we were a couple. And basically she asked him to tell her about home. And that's the end. Yay! So I'm actually, like, I need more.
Oh, yeah.
I need more.
Yeah, I got to a point, I was like, I'm at 80%. Like, there's definitely going to be another one because there's no way things are going to wrap up.
Yeah. There's probably
quickly.
There's at least one more. I wouldn't be surprised if there was, like, 2 more. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, I need more.
Oh, yeah.
So,
like,
I'm
immediately.
Intrigued. I'm intrigued. So, what would you rate this?
I rated it a 4.5.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, I didn't know what it was going to be about. I'm going to rate the same. Like, it was a quick, easy read for me. Like, I don't think that, obviously with fantasy, there's always world building. I don't think it was hard to follow. Like, talking out loud, I can't say any of these things. But, I mean, like, in my head, I'm good. Like, whatever. I don't need to know the exact term. But, yeah, like, I love, obviously, romance. But, like, there's enough to, like, have me intrigued. Mm-hmm. But, like, it's not, like, if you're not into that, like, I don't think it's, I mean, they only kissed, like, once.
Yeah, it's definitely not, like, romance-led. It's not romance-heavy.
Yeah, not at all. So I like it. Yeah, I think it was good. Like I don't have any complaints about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. And you know, the world building was complex but understandable.
Yeah,
which I really enjoyed that. And you know, getting all of she created this world with all of these tribes and their individual like magic systems and stuff. But I loved it.
Yeah. I thought it was really good. She did a really good job. So, yeah, like I said, I don't look at anything. So I was like, sometimes with fantasy, like, and I do like fantasy, but I'm like, oh. Because, like, it can be daunting. Like, and that's why I never read fantasy for a long time. So, like, no, I think it's a really easy, like, intro to fantasy. Even if, like, I think Avatar and stuff is easy. But, like, if you're not even ready for that, like, I think this is a good intro.
Yeah, especially if you're not, like, into the spice or whatever. Like, I would say that this is definitely a good intro fantasy. I adored it. And I'm calling it right now. The White Widow is not dead. That is too easy.
I don't think so at all. Yeah, she's not dead. I don't think she'll, like, I feel like there probably have to be at least more than, like, maybe 3 books at least. So I'm like, she probably won't even die in that one. And, like, ugh.
I'm just hoping that there wasn't like a switcheroo or anything with her and Skylar.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I'm just hoping not. I mean, which it may not. I may just be like looking way too far into stuff. Oh my God,
you just killed me. I didn't even think.
I need it immediately. That. I need the next one.
I did not consider that. Oh my God. Well, maybe you just gave her an idea. That might be horrible. Oh my gosh.
I hope not.
I hope not. I mean, that'll probably be good writing, but like,
I would be so mad.
Okay, so I did not fan cast because I didn't. So, okay, so we didn't fan cast.
Neither did I.
Any other, like, thoughts or anything about it?
Okay. What was your favorite scene?
I like any of them when it was like her, Ka, and like Jeddak. Like, I just like their banter. I don't know. I can't think of like I can't just pick one out, but like any of those scenes, I just like the most. Like I like their banter and everything.
I really like the whole Bramblelands. I think that was
cool.
I really liked just that, all of that, but I do like, the budding friendship and everything between Ka and Jeddak and Raven. Especially Ka and Raven. Because Jeddak is like...
He gives me Taryn vibes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love like a grumpy old man. Like guardian angel type character. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, and I'm trying to think if I have like any like theories. Well, I want to know, like, okay, so things we don't know. We don't know, like, okay, her brother, that was not her brother. So I'm like,
yeah.
Like, the dream still seemed innocent because, like, it seemed like that was, but, like, okay, so who's Rainier?
Right. And I'm like, so is that kind of just something that her brain made up? Or was that, like, an implanted memory?
Because it's weird, because, like, why would you forget everything but remember that you have a brother? Anyways, like, I thought that was so weird from the, like, very beginning. Mm-hmm. So, and, like, Rainier makes way more sense than Swift.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I thought so, too.
That's interesting. I wonder if, like, Avery's going to have more.
I would like to see more.
I was expecting, like, I don't know. I thought, like, the hooded person or something, like, in the... I thought she was going to pop up there. Mm-hmm. And she didn't. So, and also, like, we have to figure out what this big bird thing is. Okay, wait. Where was the stone? No, we still don't have it. Yeah, so... Oh, that's supposed to be in the waist.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Obviously, we're on the edge.
I'm like...
I know, it's good.
Yeah, but the White Widow is not dead. For sure. Like, that's... But, yeah,
I'm trying to see if... She have a website, you would think?
Yes, and I checked it out while you were going through it, and I didn't see anything. So...
Oh, well, she'll surprise us, I guess. But, yeah, no, good job. Good job. Hats off to you. We enjoyed. So, okay, well, our next one is Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. Ooh. I have no idea what that's about. Is this a thriller?
Yes.
Okay. I sometimes I can remember what the genre is. I have no idea what it's about, but Keely's mom said it was good.
Yeah, and I've read 2 of his other books, and I've really enjoyed them. So, I have high hopes.
Okay. I'm excited. I don't know. I've been liking, like, the thriller. Like, we're reading a book for book club, and I'm like, I was only struggling to finish this book because I was also listening to that one. And so, like, I'm, like, right, like, a little past the middle of that book, and it was, like, the thriller part was getting good. So now I'm, like, I'm hooked. So I'm like, okay, now I gotta go and finish it.
Yeah. So if you want to rec, if you've not... read or listened to None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. It is so good. So good.
And it, like, apparently there's a podcast.
Yeah, so they made a fictional podcast, based around the whole story because there's, like, excerpts from the book has, like, podcast elements. So they brought in... You can find it, I know, definitely on Spotify, probably Apple Podcasts.
I'm trying to finish before I listen to it, because I'm like, I'm just going to finish. But, like, yeah, that's cool. So, yeah. So that one's, like, interesting, too, if you're looking for a recommendation. But,
it's a fun read.
Yeah, everyone in the book club says they like it, so. Did you watch Saltburn yet?
I did not.
Oh, my God. I'm going to ask her every week until she watches it. I got people in the book club to watch it, and they're disturbed, and that's exactly what I wanted.
You know what? I may watch it here tomorrow like between customers.
Okay. Yes. We'll see. We're going to see. All right. So if you're not already, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Booktrospective. Oh, we have a website now. We have a website. So there's not tons on there, but you can listen to the podcast there too. And I put a calendar on there that I spent a little time working on. So there's that.
Dominique is busy making sure it's all nice.
I try. I'm just a natural busybody. I don't know what to do at free time. So I think that's all I got.
That's all I have.
All right. Bye.
Bye.